Shalawama, Shalawama. I'm DrYasapa from Zion Law School. Today in this live stream, we're going to talk about Paul, more problems with the Apostle Paul. In fact, this is a problem that you've never heard before. And this is probably the most damning problem associated with the Apostle Paul. And that damning problem has to do with the conversion of the Apostle Paul and its astrological meaning. That's right. The Apostle Paul's conversion is a physical or represents a physical phenomena in nature. But what is it? What is that physical phenomenon that they copied in the Godspell, in the Gospels, and made into a remix according to the author, a fairy tale story about the Apostle Paul being converted from a man who once hated the Christians and who was murdering them into a person who all of a sudden was converted, and he is a supporter, the most staunchest supporter of JC, Christ figure. All right, so that's what we're going to deal with today. This is going to be a phenomenal discussion, presentation in terms of the issue. Now, why is this important to you? Because Paul, based upon what we just discussed, based upon his conversion, he wrote most of the books of the New Testament, okay? And there's a lot of argument about the authenticity of Paul, who he is, because his writings, although it is claimed that they are difficult to read, difficult to understand, but it is claimed that he is writing information that's consistent with Moses' writings, all right? In other words, with the so-called Hebrew scriptures. But there's a big contradiction, and there's always been an argument on this topic. Now, here's the point. When you listen to this information about Paul's conversion, you have to add that to all of the argument against Paul's writings. So I'm telling you up front that this is damning, very damning for Paul and all of the content or doctrine that's based upon Paul. Okay, so again, Paul's conversion represents a physical, astronomical event. And we're going to get into that and show some evidence. All right, so I'm DrYasapa. This is Zion Law School. Call somebody, let them know we are presenting this presentation. Call them up, let them know, especially people you care about. This is information that everybody must know, okay? Breaking the God spell. When I say I got that from the author. Breaking the God spell for me doesn't mean getting you out of Christianity. That's not what it means. At least that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is get the information to you so you'll have it. You'll no longer be bamboozled as you are right now. You're dependent on somebody else to tell you, all right? You're trusting people. You're believing instead of knowing. So break the God spell from my point of view, and what I'm doing is getting the information to you so that you can know it, digest it yourself, analyze it yourself, ask critical questions yourself, and then, and only then, make a decision as to whether or not you're going to continue believing the things that you believe as far as your religion is concerned. And let me say this about the Hebrew Israelites, okay? Let's clear something up. You'll often hear Hebrew Israelites say that that being a Hebrew Israelite is not a religion. That's what you hear them say, okay? But if it's not a religion, why are they using religious titles? Why are they talking in a religious way? Okay, why do they take words that you've heard in English and then add a modern or biblical Hebrew word in there or two? This is the same thing that the European priests did. Okay? This is the same thing that the European priests did, as you're going to see. They changed the names of pagan gods. Okay? They changed the names of pagan gods in the Gospels. All right? So, for example, Apollo became Paul. Y'all see that? Etc. There's a million examples of this. So the Hebrew Israelites are doing nothing but the same thing. That instead of saying Moses, they say Moshe, and now they call themselves Moreh, and all of these things. So you're getting played with words. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, well then guess what? It's a duck. Not probably a duck, it's a duck until proven otherwise. So when you see Hebrew Israelites throwing in a word or two that's in modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew, whatever it is that they're doing, and then they're telling you that being a part of their organization is not a religion, it's not a religion, a camp is not a church. Well, let me tell you, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If they're involved, if they do ceremonies and rituals and all of these things, it is a religion by definition. So don't be fooled. A nation is a bloodline attached to a specific land mass. The people who are occupying, the people who are the rightful heirs of that land share a common language. In our case, the House of Yasharallah, it is Ancient Ibaryath. They share a common language, a common culture. Broadly speaking, this would be a common heritage, all right? So the things, there are tangibles and intangibles associated, or that heritage involves tangibles and intangibles. So for example, heritage can be land, it can be minerals on your land, right? It can be the trees, it can be anything that's physical, tangible, that's passed down or that can be passed down to you. It can be rings, jewelry, furniture. These are the tangibles. The intangibles would be what? Your titles. See, there are titles that connect you to the American continent. All, okay, A-L. Now, if you pronounce that in Ibrahim, the way I teach to pronounce words, it would be Allah. Go figure. Al is pronounced in Ancient Ibaryath, Allah, Allah. El, Bay, Day, and Ali. These are your titles that attach you to the land. All right. In other words, you need these titles as proof of your attachment to the land. Why? Because your birthright comes from attachment to the land through the bloodline. Through the bloodline, because why? Because the Most High gave our ancestors a land grant as indigenous, or let me repeat that, as the autochthonous men and women. All right, what am I saying? We men and women who were sprung from the land, sprung from the soil. That's Genesis chapter 2, but that's not what we're here for. But that is what a nation is. A nation is not something you can get kicked out of because you don't believe their doctrine. All right? That's called an organization, a club, or a church. So if you can get kicked out of your church, if you can get kicked out of your camp, or if you need to join a camp, if you need to join a church, what is that telling you? That's not a nation. That's a church, camp, club, or some other type of organization, right? Because nationality comes with birth through a bloodline with all the factors that we just discussed. So stop falling for the okie doke, okay, y'all? Stop falling for the okie doke. All right, so here we go. Let's get into the topic with all of that now said. All right, so let's get into it. So let's go to, we're dealing with the chapter on the temple. So this is a continuation from live stream number 15 debriefing. Okay, live stream number 15 debriefing. All right, so we got some work to do. This was kind of a complicated chapter, but it took me a minute to get this, to understand it well enough so that I can present it to you. So what are we dealing with in this chapter? We're dealing with Paul. Well, not in this chapter, but in these next few pages. Let me get to pages. Beginning on page 103, we're dealing with Paul, okay, y'all? Paul. So more problems with Paul. More problems with Paul. And these are huge problems. These are huge problems. You'll never have to talk about Paul again after you learn this, all right? If you understand it well enough. If you understand it well enough to be able to explain it. I'm going to do my best to get that to you. So we're going to start not on page 103. We're going to start on page 102. We're going to talk about Saul first, okay? All right. We're going to talk about Saul. And of course, everybody knows Saul at one time was the king of Israel. Take a look at the highlight. Saul was the king of Israel. And what's outstanding about Saul? What's outstanding about Saul? Of course, Saul wanted to kill King David. Saul wanted to kill King David. Now, in this book, the author, Rev Robert Taylor, is telling us that King Saul is actually Paul. In other words, Paul is a rewrite of the major elements of the story of King Saul in the Old Testament. So Paul in the New Testament is King Saul in the Old Testament. It's a rewrite, the major elements. Now, King Saul's son, Jonathan, and David, who would eventually become king, these in the Old Testament represent the constellation or the zodiac sign called Gemini. Is it clear? Gemini, the two twins of May and June. All right. Now, let's continue moving on. Again, King Saul is Paul in the New Testament. Jonathan and David, who would eventually become king, these are none other than the constellation of Gemini, the two twins of Gemini. Now, in the New Testament, Gemini becomes Castor, the star Castor, and the star Polox. Okay? Gemini in the New Testament are the stars Castor and Polox. Now, Castor and Polox, these are what? These are the lawyers. These are the two who are what? Primarily, or let me say only and aggressively interested in and administering law and justice. All right, keep these things in mind, law and justice. We're going to come back to that. So now let's continue going on. Let's move over to, let me check my notes here, y'all. Let me see if I want to say anything else about page 2. Oh, okay, so the author makes this interesting point. The author says that Paul was not converted. Okay, Paul in the New Testament was not converted. It was King Saul who was actually converted. It was King Saul who was actually converted. All right. Now, in this story, Saint Luke, if y'all look at the Bible book, or the New Testament book called Luke, St. Luke's, the author says here, quote, Saul, which is also called Paul. All right, so we get confirmation from the book of Luke that Saul is actually Paul. Saul is called Paul. All right, that's page 102. Y'all see that? Okay, excuse me. Now, what are the differences? What are the differences? The author continues and he writes this. He says, Saul and Paul are one and the same person, only, check this out, y'all, only in the sense as the sun of November. So that means in November, the sun in the month of November is the same as the sun in May. So in other words, in November, you look up in the sky, that's the same sun that you looked up in the sky and saw in May. Only difference is a change in name. Everybody see that? This becomes important. So keep this in mind. All right, now remember I said this chapter is a little bit confusing. So pay as close attention as you can. So now the constellation in November is Sagittarius. Sagittarius is the man on the horse with the bow and arrow, right? So what is Sagittarius doing in November? Sagittarius is riding on his horse. He's a man. He's half horse, half man. In fact, the larger part of the constellation of Sagittarius represents the horse, okay? Those stars that represent the horse, it's larger than those stars that represent the man. Keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind. So in November, what is Sagittarius doing? Well, Sagittarius is galloping forth with his bow and arrow in hand, and he's destroying all of the vegetation on Earth, right? Why? Because in the wintry months, the vegetation dies off because it's too cold and there's no sun, right? So this is what Sagittarius is doing. All of the vegetation is dying in these dark, cold, wintry months. Keep that in mind. So I'm simply repeating what I read in the chapter, all right? Now, the author continues to say, the only difference in this topic that we're talking about, Saul and Paul, are the characters. Okay, so Saul before his conversion, so King Saul before his conversion, being the November sun, S-U-N, in the sign of Sagittarius, where you see the great persecutor with his bow and arrow. So the great persecutor is Sagittarius, right? The great persecutor is Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is persecuting the vegetation on the earth. Sagittarius, again, is persecuting the vegetation on the earth. He is causing the vegetation to die off. Why? Because there's not enough sun and it's cold, all right? And it's cold. Now, Paul, we're going to get to this about Paul, all right? We're going to get to this about Paul. Now, remember, the wintry months, what's happening in the wintry months? Where we go from fall, okay, which is September, autumn and September, October, okay, wintry months, November, December. Now remember, December 21st, 22nd, that's hell, the bottomless pit. Okay, so Sagittarius is marching forth, galloping forth toward hell. In other words, the sun is continuing to fall in November until it falls to its lowest point in the southern sky, which is what? December 21st, 22nd, the bottomless pit of hell. Y'all got that? So that is Sagittarius persecuting the vegetation. King Saul persecuting David. Okay, so now let's continue. Let's continue. We're still, this is interesting. If you look at the last paragraph, on page 102, you're going to find a Ibaryath word written in biblical Hebrew characters. What does it mean, biblical Hebrew characters? There are no vowel pointings, and the pictographs have been changed. Let me show you what I mean here. Now, if we did a word study on this, we can get some additional meaning of this. Excuse me. Let me show you what we're dealing with here. I'm going to blow it up for you. So this is what I'm talking about. Take a look at that highlight. All right, take a look at the highlighted word here. Give me 1 second. Let me pull it back up so y'all can see what I mean. So we're dealing with the modern, here we are. Here we are. Y'all see that highlight? That highlight, you see modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew characters. They're the same, right? They use the same pictographs right here. So if we were to do a word study, we'd come up with some information that's not in this paragraph. Maybe I'll do that in another video. But notice what the author says here. All right, the author says that this word here that is translated or rendered as Saul, when it suits the doctrinal needs of the priest, they translate it as hell. All right, when it suits their needs, they translate this word here as hell. All right, so you should be thinking Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8 already. All right, the name Saul being in Hebrew the self-same word, and you see Saul in the modern Hebrew or biblical Hebrew pictographs. Okay, the name Saul being in Hebrew the self-same word, which is wherever it serves the purpose, translated hell. Y'all see that? It's translated hell. Now, look at what it says about Paul. Let me highlight that. Paul. All right? Paul, the Greek name Paul, is an abbreviation of the Greek Apollo. Y'all see that? Paul is an abbreviated form of the deity whose name is Apollo, Apollo. Paul in Greek means Apollo, the deity Apollo, who is the deity of May. Y'all see that? Apollo, under whose protection the month of May is placed. Okay, so now remember, we're talking about the constellation Gemini, the twins of May. Who is the deity of May? Apollo. Paul is therefore the deity of the month of May because Paul is Apollo. Paul is the deity of the month of May. Y'all got that? May is one of the twins of Gemini. The second twin of Gemini is what? In June, all right? So you have one twin of May and then another twin in June. But what you're going to soon see is that Castor and Polox are the Gemini twins. So Polox is the twin of May, and then Castor is the twin of June, all right? And all this means is the sun, the S-U-N sun in May, right? And then the sun, S-U-N sun in June. That's all it's saying. So don't let this confuse you. As confusing as it seems, all right? So now this is according to the Julius Caesar calendar. You see how slick these priests are? You see how deceitful these priests are? They know that 99.99% of the people will not ever even see a Julius Caesar calendar. But that's what they're working with. That's how they bamboozle you through your ignorance. That's why breaking the God spell is not about you changing religion. Breaking the God spell is about you becoming aware, you becoming knowledgeable. of how, what, where, and why these gospels and Jeremiah 8, verse 8, occurrences occur in both the Old and the New Testament. Y'all got me? So you cannot be fooled, all right? That said, we offer the streaming 101 Ancient Ibaryath course to help you, all right? So the master key to identifying and overcoming lies in the Bible, deceit in the Bible, errors in the Bible, okay? And we know this through Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. The streaming 101 Ancient Ibaryath course, that is the master key to finding and breaking free from Jeremiah 8:8 occurrences, all right? But it's up to y'all to do it. I can't pull the trigger for you. The only thing I can do is bring this stuff to your attention, all right? So, and I think I've done a very good job with that thus far, all right? I think I've done a very good job with that. So I forgot to say thanks. So if you've already subscribed to the 101 Ancient Ibaryath course, congratulations and thank you for the support. It will change your life. You're on the beginning path of waking up and seeing these documents as they really are, okay? Getting out of the religious mindset, breaking the gospel, moving into knowledge, returning to the Most High. And the really great thing about this is that you're learning about the Most High's creation. The Most High created the zodiac, okay? He created the stars. You know, we're not talking about any type of spookism, or we're talking about natural phenomena. All right, now let's continue. Point I'm trying to make is this. The priest, your pastor, your moray, your priest, they may be a Freemason without you knowing it. And they may know this stuff. And they smile in your face and they pimp you. They pimp you for a tithe and for regular donations. And they're driving big cars and big houses while you're struggling, worrying about whether or not you're going to get laid off, or you're trying to find a job, or how to pay for college, or all of the expenses that a man, woman, or family has, right? So you're getting played. You're getting played. So be sure to educate yourself, all right? We probably have close to 200 hours right now of astrotheology content. You can't find that anywhere else. But anyway, let's get back to the topic. So we're going to move on to page 103, all right? So let me see what else I need. Oh, by the way, I need to mention that Polox, the star Polox. Remember, Castor is a star. Polox is a star. So the star Polox is the star of May. So what are the characteristics of May? In other words, May is like what? What's May like in terms of the weather? What's happening in May? So in May, everything is growing, right? It's getting nice outside. It's getting warm outside, right? Things have already melted. The vegetation, the plants, the flowers, everything is blossoming. It's beautiful. Everything is growing. May is a beautiful time of the year. All right. So the star Polox is May. Remember that. The star Polox is May. That's what we're dealing with. Okay. This is a beautiful season. Okay. May. Remember, there's winter, spring, summer, and fall. So spring is a beautiful season. Summer is a beautiful season. Fall is in the middle, right? The sun is already, everybody knows well, for those people in parts of the world who've never seen fall, in fall, what's happening? The days are getting shorter. In other words, more nighttime hours than there are day. The leaves on the trees are turning colors. The green leaves become yellow. From yellow, they turn orange and then brown. The leaves fall off of the tree, right? All of the grass begins to die. All of your plants and flowers, the leaves are falling off and everything is dying. So that's what happens in fall. And it starts to get chilly, depending on where you are. Like if you're in North America, depending on where you are, it can get really chilly. It can get really cold, okay, or it can be mild. But definitely in November, it's already wintry, cold, snow, ice, the whole 9 yards, all right? So that's what's happening with the seasons for those of you who may be in Africa who've never seen fall, who may be in Asia who've never seen what the fall looks like, okay? So that's what the fall season looks like. Now let's continue. We're gonna go to page 103, and I wanna show y'all, remember I told y'all, they play on words. You're getting played. The Hebrew Israelites, remember I told you that? They add in a modern Hebrew word, okay? Or a biblical Hebrew word like Moshe, or these other words. I won't say them because I don't want to offend people, all right? It's enough that I'm presenting this. But I don't want people to think I'm talking about them if I start to quote the words that they use. You can put two and two together, all right? Look at the highlight section here. Hey, Prakash, sorry about that. All right. It was too loud back there. Okay, so here, take a look at what we're looking at, the highlight. It says here, take a look, and y'all, I showed this information so that nobody can turn around and say, DrYasapa said, all right? I show it so you can see the evidence. So you can see the evidence, okay? This is about you getting education, not me telling you something, okay? You see the evidence yourself. So if it takes long, or if you feel like we're doing a lot of reading, well, you need to develop your academic discipline, right? You need to develop your academic discipline. The problem is not with the presentation. The problem is with you, okay? You need to develop your academic muscle. You need to increase your attention span. And I'm not being nasty, I'm just telling you the truth, okay? Now look at the highlight here. It says here, I'm going to read this. We have not only our great aids, Polusis, or Church of Polox. Now, Church of Polox, right? Polox is the star. In other words, the Church of the star Polox, okay? The deity Polox, all right? So the natural phenomena is the star Polox. The remix in mythology is the deity Polox, okay? In Christianity, the remix is the Church of Polox. Y'all see that? There were 3 levels to that. So the Church of Polox was turned into St. Paul's Church. There's the deceit. There is the deceit. Paul is English, right? Paul is English. So they changed Polox into Paul. And now they're calling it the Church of Paul. Okay, so in other words, they abbreviate it this way. If you're in the club, you'll know about the Church of Paul. Okay? Or it can be what? Paul. They turn Paul into Paul. Everybody see that where the highlight is? Clear as day. Okay? Now notice, let's keep reading. It says, but if you shall ever visit Rome, you shall find the temple of Apollo. Now remember, Apollo is Paul. The deity Apollo is Paul, is Polox. If you shall ever visit Rome, you shall find the temple of Apollo. That was now called the temple of Apollinaris. Apollinaris. The temple of Mars turned into the temple of Maritina. Y'all see that? You see how many times they changed the name? Very, very interesting stuff, right? So they're hiding this stuff. And how are they hiding it? They're hiding it in language. See, if you understand the concepts and principles of linguistics, you can see this stuff. You can see it, right? The lights are turned on. If you understand etymology, root words, bases, prefixes, infixes, suffixes, if you understand these things, then guess what? If you ever get your hands on the documents and you're conscious of Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, then you can see all of this. You'll see all of it. But even if you understand linguistics, unless you came into contact with Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, then you'll never suspect that you're being worked. So when I was in college, when somebody was using you, it was called being worked. That person is working you. So, and that stuck with me. So you'll never know that you're being worked because you'll never suspect it. You'll never suspect it, right? You think that you've been taught that everything in the Bible is true. See, you've been worked. You've been had, bamboozled, brainwashed. That's hard for a lot of people to accept because you got your whole life that you built, and this is the foundation that you built your whole life on, and now you're finding out that that foundation is a lie. But not only is it a lie, you thought it was something that was helping you and benefiting you, when actually it is the thing itself that is oppressing you and holding you back. That's right. You are holding the matches in your own pocket that are burning your house down or burning your life down. You're holding those matches in your own pocket, and you did not know it, but now you know it. I'm Dr. Yasapa from Zion Law School, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to bring this information to you. Break the gospel. Get educated on what these gospel stories mean and where they are connected in the Old Testament, okay? Jeremiah 8, verse 8 is at work, is at play. You must become aware and alert. All right, so I'm not going to mention the 101 Ancient Ibaryath course anymore, but y'all know what it is. You already know what it is. All right, so now let's continue. Now we're going to get more into Paul's conversion and what this means. All right. So let me repeat this again. Paul's conversion was not a moral event. It wasn't even, now I'm talking about Paul's conversion in the New Testament, in the Gospels, right? Now remember, the author brought to our attention that these stories are in fact what? Not just fairy tales. See, fairy tales, that sounds innocent enough, doesn't it? These stories are not just fairy tales, but they are incantations. They are charms. They are incantations. They are charms. They are spells. They are spells, as in casting spells. These stories are spells. They are black magic. These stories are black magic. And y'all been thinking all of this time that black magic is some herbs. You know, you get some roots and some leaves, some twigs, and you boil it, you stir everything up in the pot, right? That's what y'all been thinking, okay? And y'all associate that with something bad. When in actuality, that was your grandmother making something that the Most High created, using those things to either feed you or heal you. So here again, the priest made you think that that herb concoction, that herbal recipe that grandma made or great grandma made was spiritistic and that it could kill you spiritually. But when in fact it was natural, it is natural, and it can heal you physically. And with a good mind and a good body, life is so much more enjoyable. And guess what? With a good mind and a good body, guess what? Not only can you fight and defend yourself, but what else can you do? You can more easily learn to read because your body and your faculties are working properly. Everybody see that? So if you ever got your hands on some documents, you'd be in a better place where you can learn to read and then understand those documents. So these priests, these Christian priests, these Christian Baptist reverends and pastors, I'm not talking about all of them. I'm talking about most of them. Most of them who knew about this told you that that good stuff that your grandma was doing that could heal you, was harmful for your spiritual life and could cause you to burn in hell. Y'all see how dirty and rotten and deceitful these people are? Okay? But let's go back to it. Paul's conversion was not moral. It did not happen in real life according to the author. Why is it saying it was not moral? Because remember, Paul was going out in the story killing Christians. Okay? And he was very good at what he was doing. He was passionate about killing Christians. So that's where this morality stuff comes in, okay? That's what that's talking about. So it was not a moral conversion from a murderer to a man of God. That's not what's happening here. It's a physical conversion that occurs in the sky. It's a physical conversion that occurs in the sky. All right, so we are at the bottom of page 103. Okay, so now let's continue. Let's continue. So Saul, remember Saul is Sagittarius, the half man, half horse. Now remember, the horse, the part of the constellation that makes up the horse, is much bigger than the part of the constellation that makes up the man. Keep that in mind. Okay, so Saul, S-A-U-L, King Saul, is Sagittarius, the constellation Sagittarius, in November. Okay, in November. So Saul gets struck to the ground, right? Saul gets killed. Saul gets struck to the ground. So now there is a church that's dedicated to Paul, St. Paul. I think we mentioned that already. I don't know if I got ahead of myself or not. But there's a church, it's called what? The Cathedral of Polox or St. Paul's Cathedral. So on the western pediment, there's a statue, and I'm going to show you all this statue, okay? So let's take a look at the statue on the western pediment. We'll take a look at the statue on the western pediment of this cathedral. You know, it's very interesting. My live stream shows one person viewing, but whenever I check the stats on YouTube, it's a whole lot more. But anyway, that's a whole different story. All right. So I want y'all to see this. So now here's the western pediment. I'm going to blow this up. Here's the western pediment on St. Paul's Cathedral, okay, the Cathedral of Polox. So here it is. This is the western pediment. So now let me go back and show you, blow this up. Now you're going to see what we're talking about. Now you're going to see it with your own eyes, okay? So let's blow this up. Oops, wait a minute. Hold on. Give me a second. Where is it? Give me a second, y'all. So I gotta blow. I'm looking at the wrong picture. Let me pull this up. Okay, so I'm going to show you what that image looks like because you need to see it. It makes it easier to understand this story. All right. So where is it? All right. So here we are. I got it. There we go. So y'all take a look at this. This is the sun. Right here is the sun. These are sun rays. Y'all see that? These are sun rays. Or what? Sunbeams. A sun ray is what? A beam of light, a beam of sun. So these are beams of light. Y'all see that? These are clouds. Okay, so these are clouds. Over here is a cloud. All right. Now everybody see that, okay? This is the sun. These are sun rays or what? Beams, sun beams. You can see them, right? Coming out from the sun, sunbeams. Now remember, this is St. Paul's Cathedral. Here is the horse on the ground. Here is Paul, right? He fell down with the horse. This is Paul's conversion, right? Y'all know the story, the bright light and all of that. Paul falls down. Y'all see it? Here's the horse on the ground. And here's Paul. Here are the beams, sunbeams, beams of light. Everybody see that? This is on the western pediment of St. Paul's Cathedral. Why is this important? Why is it important? Because here's the horse. Here's the horse. This is Sagittarius. Sagittarius falling down. Okay? Here's the horse, half man. Okay? This is the symbology of that. Half horse, half man. Paul riding on the horse. Now, how do we know that? How do we know that? Because the story in the Gospels doesn't say that Paul was riding on a horse. The story in the Gospels does not say that Paul was riding on a horse. So let me go back to the content in the book. Okay, so Pole, the deity Pole, you get this on page 103 and I think 104. The deity Pole struck down Saul. So you see Saul was struck down here, okay? Saul is struck down here by the deity Pole, okay? So let me read this so nobody has any question. On page 103, it says the conversion which it commemorates is not moral, but a physical one. So this is the conversion that we're talking about, that the author is talking about. As you see, the man and horse of November, to whose honor the church is dedicated. What church? That's the St. Paul's Cathedral. Okay? As you see Saul, S-A-U-L, as you see Saul, the man and horse of November in the Tympanum, sprawling on the ground, so there he is on the ground, while Polox, to whose honor the church is dedicated, and who has struck Saul to the ground. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. If you go to page 104, it continues. It says, and this conversion, you will observe, takes place expressly when the son of Gemini, that means it's you're in the month of May. That's all he's talking about. That means in the month of May, which is Gemini, remember May is one of the twins, at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun is exactly at the meridian. That's the astronomical meridian, okay? Now, let me read this from the beginning again. And this conversion, you will observe, takes place expressly at midday. That is when the sun of Gemini is exactly at the meridian, that's the celestial meridian, 12 o'clock on June 9th in the calendar of Julius Caesar. Okay, so now y'all know we're not using the calendar of Julius Caesar right now, okay? But this is when the conversion takes place. This is the physical phenomenon, all right? That's the physical phenomenon. So when does a conversion happen? It happens according to the Julius Caesar calendar on June 9th at 12 o'clock noon. That's when the sun is at the meridian. All right, that's when the sun is at the meridian. That's when the sun of Gemini, which is May, which is Polox, enters into the month of June, which is Castor, all right, at 12 o'clock noon. I know it's a little bit confusing, but y'all go back and read this again, okay? So remember Castor and Polox. This is Gemini, the twins. Polox is the twin of May. So when it's the month of May, the sun is in what? The sun is in Gemini in the month of May. So that's the star of Polox. Okay, and then June, this, right? So you go from May to June. So now the sun, now the month is June, and the sun is in June, which is the star Castor or the deity Castor, right? And these are the twins of Gemini. Y'all got it? Easy enough, right? All right. So now here we see the Sagittarius. Go back to the image that we're looking at. Here we see that Sagittarius, here's your horse and the man. Okay, now there's no bow and arrow, right? There's no bow and arrow. Why? Because he's been struck to the earth, so maybe he dropped it. Okay, maybe he dropped it. Okay, so Sagittarius is struck to the earth. How? By the rising sun and the beams of light. Y'all see this? You can get this on page 104. As a matter of fact, I'm going to read this, all right? I'm going to read this so y'all can see it for yourself. So now this is the time when you really need your, to have your printed copy, okay? But I'm going to read this so y'all can see it, so there is no question about it. I'm on page 104. This is the second paragraph. All right, and it reads, now it will be for those who would outrage our reason by pretending a historical sense for so clearly hieroglyphical a representation. Okay, he's talking about Paul being converted in the fairy tale, okay, being a representation of the natural phenomena that we just discussed, all right? So now let's continue. And that representation had reference to the conversion of a man. So we're going to skip down. Okay. Let me show this. Let me show this. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to this image, y'all. I'm going to show this. All right. So we don't have any problems. Nobody's going to say DrYasapa made this up. Okay. Because that's an easy excuse, right? That's an easy excuse. Okay. That's an easy excuse for somebody to throw out there. So this is the paragraph we're on, the highlighted paragraph. All right. Keep that image in mind that we just looked at. I want y'all to see this. This is page 104. Okay, so you can go back and do your own research. The book is The Devil's Pulpit by the Reverend Robert Taylor, published in 1847 from a series of sermons that were given around 1830, 1831. And I don't remember if there are earlier sermons. But anyway, here's where we are. We're dealing with that content, with that image that we just looked at. All right? So let's start here. Let's start here, okay? Notice what it says, y'all. The highlighted part. It says, and the horse makes more than half of the whole constellation of Sagittarius, which is the constellation in November, which is literally struck to the earth. Check this out. Which is literally, okay, that's what I want, which is literally struck to the earth by the ascendancy of the sun in May. So when the sun is ascending, rising, and we get into the month of May, that's what the author is talking about. Sagittarius gets struck to the earth. Okay, let me read it again. The constellation Sagittarius, which is the constellation in November, is literally struck to the earth by the ascendancy of the sun in May. So you have to ask your question, how in the world is the sun going to strike the constellation Sagittarius to the earth? How can the sun strike a constellation to the earth? That's the question, right, in your mind. So this is very broad, general, ambiguous statement. So now the author clarifies it. Look at what he says here. He says, and there actually is a sunbeam, and there actually is a sunbeam. Y'all see that? Sunbeam. And there actually is a sunbeam that's physical. There actually is a sunbeam, which is represented as striking him to the earth. And there actually is a sunbeam, which is represented as striking him, that is Sagittarius, to the earth in that pediment. What pediment? Let's go back. We're going to look at the pediment again. All right. So this is good stuff, y'all. This is good stuff. Okay, so where's our image? Let's see. Let's look at a different one. That one's not big enough to see it. Let me find the one I had last time. Let's find that pediment and look at the sunbeams striking him to the earth. Here we are. Here are the sunbeams striking Sagittarius to the earth. Y'all see the sunbeams? The sunbeams right here. Here's the sun. Here's the sun. Here are the beams of the sunbeams striking Sagittarius to the earth. Y'all see it? Sagittarius, the horse has fallen, right? Saul has fallen off the horse. Why? Because these sunbeams struck him. Okay, everybody see that? This is the figure on the Western pediment. That's what the author is talking about. All right, y'all. All right. So you see, the priests have deceived you. Your religious leaders have deceived you, and they're deceiving you through language, and then they're putting it right in your face by showing figures and statues of what? These pagan deities. Y'all see it? And y'all falling for it because you don't know no better. You trust them. Now, you got to keep in mind, scholars, that in the conversion of Paul's story, there is no horse. It doesn't say that Paul is riding on a horse, but the author makes the point. Here's what the author says in the last, let me read on page 104. This is the paragraph before the last paragraph. It says, well then, may we say to those most deceitful priests who would so impudently lie to us out of the use of our own eyesight. So what I'm trying to warn you about is this. If you go and you talk about this with your religious leader, and they tell you this is not so, but you're looking at it with your own eyes, okay, then you have to make some decisions, right? You're going to believe your own lies, or you're going to believe somebody else. Now, the last paragraph on page 104 says this. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It says, the story of the conversion of St. Paul in his journey to Damascus has no account of a horse at all. The story of the conversion of the Apostle Paul in his journey to Damascus has no account of a horse at all, but has sufficient admission that the Apostle Paul was not worth a horse, and that after he had been struck to the earth, remember Paul in the Gospel, Paul in the New Testament is King Saul in the Old Testament, all right? So let me read it again. The Apostle Paul was not worth a horse, and that after he had been struck to the earth and got his legs again, that means he fell down and he was able to get back up, he was led by the hand, and that's the key phrase. Paul was led by the hand, that's the key phrase, led by the hand of those who were with him, which would not have been the case if they had a horse for him to ride on. Y'all see it? If there was a horse for the Apostle Paul to ride on, then nobody would have had to lead him by the hand. The Apostle Paul was walking. So why then the horse? What's the purpose of the horse? Well, let's continue. The author writes, this is the last paragraph on page 104. Listen to what the author says. Yet no piece of statuary, that means no statue. There's no statue, no ancient entablature, no antique or ancient painting or picture in the world represents this story, this fairy tale, this allegorical story of Paul's conversion, omits to give the same prominence to the figure of a horse. So what is this saying? This is saying that there's no ancient statue, no ancient painting, no ancient image whatsoever that's showing Paul's conversion where there was not a horse. In other words, in all of the ancient images and statues, Paul is on a horse. But in the gospel story, he is not on the horse. But in all of the ancient images, be it a statue, a painting, a figure like we're looking at now, Paul is always on a horse. So the author is saying, why is he always on a horse? Okay, and here's the answer. Because the man on the horse is Sagittarius. It's representative of the constellation Sagittarius, half man, half horse, the constellation of November. The constellation of November. So now let's look at a Old Testament reference here that the author is bringing to our attention about Miriam. Okay, and this is interesting. This is about Miriam. Okay, so let's show this. All right, so the author is relating Sagittarius to Miriam. So here we go. So I'm going to read this. It says here, now remember we're talking about Sagittarius of November, thus throwing us up a philosophical and rational meaning of the Song of Miriam. So in other words, the Song of Miriam has to do or is about Sagittarius being thrown to the earth. Let's read it. Okay, the Song of Miriam in celebration of the self-same conversion of Saul. So the song of Miriam is a celebration of Sagittarius falling to the earth. That's astronomical, right? The constellation Sagittarius falling to the earth by a beam of light on June 9th at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, when the sun is at the meridian. I'm sorry, when the star is at the meridian. Okay? So the song of Miriam has an astronomical meaning. All right? So Miriam sang, "Sing ye to the capital Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he hath thrown into the sea." The horse and his rider, that would be Sagittarius, according to the author. Now, when you look at page 105, it's going to tell you that Miriam is the star Spica Virginis. Miriam is Spica Virginis. That's the star. All right? So let me read this for y'all so everybody can see this. So y'all see these astronomical events happening here? Okay? Why haven't your religious leader told you about these? Go ask them. Go ask your Moshe, pastor, reverend about this information, so that you're not just taking it from the author. You can get your religious leader's point of view, okay? It reads here, "And here, sirs, is Miriam." Miriam is the star Spica Virginis, rising out of the Red Sea. And here is Miriam, or Spica Virginis, rising out of the Red Sea, singing to Pol. Remember, Pol is Polox, Saul and Paul, who is at that moment at the meridian. What moment? June 9th, 12 o'clock noon in the Julius Caesar calendar. And here, sirs, is Miriam, Spica Virginis, rising out of the Red Sea, singing to Pol. Pol, where is Pol? Pol, on June 9th at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, is at the meridian. While Saul, the horse and his rider, in other words, while Sagittarius is at that moment at the bottom of the sea. All right? So if you were to look at a celestial map for June 9th at 12 o'clock, you'll see Pol at the meridian. You'll see Miriam rising out of, or rising above the horizon, right? Rising out of, rising above the Red Sea. And you'll see Sagittarius, the horse and his rider, at the bottom of the sea, or what? Falling to the earth. All right, everybody see how that works? That's on page 105. Okay, so y'all can go back and do your own research on that. All right, so let's see, what else? I think we talked about, here's an interesting point too. Now, the author makes the point that Paul is represented by those who claim they saw him or knew him as being an old man, a bald-headed old man, right? So you'll get that in this paragraph at the bottom. Paul is said by historical figures in the church, specifically Saint Jerome and Saint Cyprian, describe Paul as being a little man, pot-bellied, randy-legged, and he was an old man, and he had a bald head. All right? And then notice this, full of the king's evil and the grace of God. Y'all see that? That's what? Polarity. Evil and God and the grace of God. Polarity. A reference again to what? Natural law. Y'all see how they playing you? See how you're getting played? All right, so now evil and grace are the extreme opposites of a line, right? Polarity. So here's Paul. Paul has a head full of hair. So this is not the old man Paul who said to be bald-headed. This guy looks to be middle-aged, like a mature man. Look at his body. He looks to be strong and healthy. He doesn't have a pot belly. So this is not the Apostle Paul. So why is it on the cathedral of St. Paul's? Why is it on St. Paul's Cathedral in the West? Well, because this is Sagittarius on June 9th at 12 o'clock in the noon. And here's the sun and the sunbeam knocking Paul or knocking Saul to the earth. Okay, so Saul, as in Miriam's song, listen to it. Sing ye to the capital Lord, for he had triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. That's this image right here, according to the author. Having reference to the Song of Miriam, this is Sagittarius on June 9th. On June 9th, on the Julius Caesar calendar, at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, being knocked to the earth. Being knocked to the earth, all right? Being knocked to the earth. Very easy, right? Very, very easy. All right. Very, very easy. So again, the big point of this picture is that these sunbeams are what's knocking the horse and its rider, Sagittarius, down. Correlate that to the story about the bright light that knocked Paul down, right? Everybody see it? Okay. All right, so just in recap, Miriam on June 9th, in the Julius Caesar calendar at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Miriam, which is the star Spica Virginis, is rising out of the Red Sea. You should be thinking Song of Miriam. Miriam, or the star of Spica, is rising out of the Red Sea, singing to Paul, who at that moment, June 9th, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, on the Julius Caesar calendar, Polox is at the celestial meridian. King Saul, which is the horse and his rider, which is Sagittarius, is at the bottom of the sea. All right, that explains that. Okay, so again, this clearly is not a bald-headed old man who has a pot belly, right? So why is it on St. Paul's Cathedral? Well, because it's astronomical. This is the physical phenomena, the celestial physical phenomena that the story of Paul's conversion represents. All right, that's what it is. And this is none other than Polox, right? This is also Polox, the deity of law and justice. So for these, think about what this is representing. So for these people who are in power right now, the light knocked their deity of law and justice and the execution of law and justice, knocked him to the earth, knocked him off of his horse, defeated him. What is this telling us? Well, we know light esoterically means what? Knowledge. So knowledge defeats their criminal justice system. Y'all see that? Polox is the greatest, the most powerful of their deity, Polox and Castor. These are the Knights Templars. These are the deities who are only and primarily interested in justice and law and the administration of justice, the administration of judgment between a man and his neighbor. Therefore, light defeats them. Light, your knowledge of natural phenomena, some people would say astrology. Your knowledge of natural phenomena, your knowledge of natural law will defeat your open enemy in a venue of law. I hope y'all see this. You see all of this. The light defeats their justice system. But you gotta be willing to put in the effort to learn. So, y'all who have not done so, go and subscribe to 101 Ancient Ibaryath course. It's a streaming course. It's only $10. You can cancel anytime. But I'm sure you won't once you get it. But you have to be willing to be taught, and you have to be willing to let these old dogs die. Those old beliefs, you got to be willing to let them go. So again, light, enlightenment, knowledge of etymology, philology, asking critical questions, called criticism, not criticizing somebody, but these are asking doubtful questions and only accepting something if the answer to that doubtful question is a positive answer, right? There's enough evidence to support you to accept that, not believe, to accept it. So you have to move from this paradigm of belief and doctrines to knowing. Knowing means what? You're intimately back in tune with natural law. So again, enlightenment, light, knowledge of natural phenomena, nature's law, and nature's creator. Astrology, astronomy. And I got to confirm this, but I came across some information that says that mathematics means astronomy. I'm sorry, mathematics means astrology, but I got to confirm it. All right. So do y'all see that? If you want to win, if you want to protect yourself, if you got some issues that you're having that are of a legal nature, now you see the solution. Now you see the solution. So we can, by returning to the Most High, whose instructions, whose laws are at their essence natural law, by doing that and learning about natural law, the Most High's instructions, and how all of these things relate, you can defeat the hybrid troglodytes in their legal system. I hope you can appreciate what I just said to you. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. What do I want to do? Okay, so let's continue on with this natural phenomenon. All right, so I'm going to read some steps. This is on page 106. Okay, so here's the first thing. When Polox, that's the star, when the star Polox is at the meridian at 12 o'clock noon on June 9th in the celestial calendar, Aries, the constellation Aries, which is the holy temple, right? Aries is the temple. Aries is the lamb of Gad, the lamb of capital G-O-D. So the constellation Aries is rising, ascending upward in the eastern sky, and Spica Virginis is setting in the west. All right, so Aries is rising upward in the east. Spica Virginis is setting or going down in the west. Y'all see that? So if you look to the west and you look downward, you'll see Spica, the star, Spica Virginis. If you look to the east and you look up, you'll see Aries, the temple, up in the sky. All right? And then the fourth, you'll see Castor, the location of Castor and Polox. These are the two stars or the two twins of Gemini. You'll see Castor and Polox are at the zenith, right? The zenith would be what? Every day the sun reaches its zenith about 12 o'clock in the noon, the highest point in the sky. Everybody got that? All right. Clear? It's clear. So you'll get this information on page 106 of the Devil's Pulpit. Now, here's something that's very, very interesting. June, the month of June in Hebrew is Thomas. Yes, it's Thomas. So this takes us what? To the Apostle Thomas, one of the 12 disciples. Thomas is also called Didymus. Let me go back and pull up the PDF, scholars, so you can see this. So let's pull up the PDF so you can see it. All right. So this is very interesting stuff here. Now remember, this is all plays on words because they have educated you, and to be blunt, they know you are stupid. They know you don't know anything about linguistics, right? You have no idea about etymology. But they never believed they'd see the day when somebody like DrYasapa and others would come out here and start educating you about linguistics, about astrotheology, about astronomy, about all of these topics that we're dealing with in philology. They never thought this day would come when we would wake up. But here you are. If you've been following these live streams, you are educated on this topic more than 99% of the population. You are no longer stupid. Those people who are not reading the Devil's Pulpit, who are not following along with these live streams, they're stupid, complete idiots, right? Those people who are not learning linguistics, philology, etymology, they're stupid idiots because that's what they were trained to be in the public school system, in the private school system, in the colleges and universities. They have absolutely no understanding of the science of language, okay? And what? The science of law, not legal stuff like you learn in law school, the science of law. All right. So look at the highlight here. Look at the highlight here. The author writes, now the Hebrew name of the month of June is Thomas. Okay. If you read down a little bit further, he says in the Gospel of St. John, the Apostle Thomas is also called Didymus. Okay. Now I want to highlight this for y'all. It says Didymus. So in the Gospel of John, the Apostle Thomas is also called Didymus. The word Didymus literally signifying a twin. Twins in Gemini. Do y'all think this is a coincidence? How many people still believe that all of these relationships, all of these connections to the cosmos, to the zodiac, are coincidences? How many people still believe that? Or how many people are beginning to see that these are not coincidences, but it is the reality? The word Didymus, literally signifying a twin, or literally means a twin. A twin. If there's a twin, there's usually going to be what? Two. What twins are we talking about? Polox and Castor, right? Polox and Castor. All right. And Thomas, one of the 12 apostles, which is called Didymus in the gospel allegory, in the gospel fairy tale, in the gospel incantation, in the gospel spell, in the gospel charm. That black magic called the gospel, that toxic spell that has had you on your knees in Christianity, on your knees begging an external deity to help you, to save you, to do something for yourself, to do something for you that you have the power, it was given to you at birth, to do for yourself. But because you've been bamboozled into believing in religion, instead of you looking inside of yourself, coming in touch with that power, knowing that you are the power, you are the power. Psalms 82:6, and ye are gods, all of you sons of the Most High. The energy that invigorates and heats your body, that powers you, gives you the energy to move, that is in fact what? That we're talking about nature and its correlation to the sun sun. That is the sun sun inside of you. That makes you the Christ. That makes you the Christ. But you're also Satan the devil. This is your higher self and your lower self. You save yourself. You have the ability to do it. You were given it at birth, but you gave it up. You don't even know it because you're worshiping these external deities that you were given in Christianity. That's the point I'm trying to make. All right? So break the God spell. Break the God spell. Get into your right mind. Get into your right mind. Learn astrotheology. And then make a conscious, intelligent decision as to what you will believe, whether or not you want to continue being involved in religion or you want to return to nature. DrYasapa has returned to nature. I follow natural law. I don't follow any religion or any doctrine. Okay? I live my life in harmony with nature. I live my life in harmony with nature, and the Most High's instructions are at their essence natural law. All right. So anyway, we've gone through, let me see, how long have we been going? Do I need to wrap this up? Yeah, let's so I hope y'all are starting to see what I'm saying. Once you begin to know that you are the power, now you begin to see yourself as you are, and you can walk in that power. You can defeat the legal system through knowledge of who you are, through learning language. See, knowing that you are sprung from the soil, knowing that you are the law, that you are the substance and subject matter of the law, that everything on the planet, you are the rightful heir to everything on the planet because you are sprung from the soil. It is yours by birthright. That's why you're able to defeat your open enemy. But as long as you are involved in these religious doctrines, you will be a victim. All right? You will be a victim. But you can defeat them when you become enlightened. You return to the ways the old paths of our ancestors. You return to natural law. You learn about nature's what? Creator and nature's law, and you will soon find out that that is you. But then the question is how, right? Well, we've been going at it, but that's another discussion. But you are the power. So stop giving it to these external deities, etc. All right? So, in closing, let's say this. Polox and Castor, they are the deities of law, justice, and the administration of judgment between a man and his neighbor. Now, there's a quote here from Brian. There's a quote from Brian. I want y'all to see this. Y'all can follow up on that. There's a quote from Brian. Okay, there's a quote from Brian that says that. Okay? So y'all read these last few paragraphs on your own. Okay, now I'm going to start here. Okay, I'm going to start to read this from here, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, but I want y'all to see this. Okay, I want y'all to see this. Why is law, the execution or the administration of law, and judgment between a man and his neighbor important in the context of the Apostle Paul? It's because Paul, what? Paul brought in a new law. Everything in the New Testament, Paul brought in. Paul was a lawyer. Everybody see that? Paul was a lawyer in the Gospels. So here is another connection to Polox, who is one of the most powerful deities. It's actually Polox and Castor. These are the two most powerful deities. Okay? And they're lawyers, they're judges. They're only concerned, again, with law, judgments, arbitration, witnesses, okay, or what? The administration of justice. All right. But I want to backtrack. I forgot to say something. I thought this was very interesting. Go back to the Apostle Thomas. Remember when the Apostle Thomas insisted on sticking his finger into the Christ figure's womb? He said he wouldn't believe it unless he touches it. Remember that? Well, guess what that's about? Guess what that's about? I'm going to read it for y'all. I don't know. I forgot to read this, but I'm going to read it. Okay, this is on page 106 and 107. So here's why the Apostle Thomas, or doubting Thomas, said, I need to touch that wound to see if this is true. And Thomas, one of the 12 apostles, is called Didymus in the gospel story, is calling for evidence. Check this out, y'all. Thomas is calling for evidence of the resurrection of Christ and insisting on having proof and not mere hearsay testimony. The fact that the Apostle Thomas, who was one of the twins, the fact that the Apostle Thomas insisted on having evidence of the resurrection by touching the wound in the Christ figure, okay? That's the proof that he insisted on having. Why? So that he wouldn't have to rely on hearsay testimony. Somebody said that the Christ figure was back, or some man came in and he said, I am the Christ. The Apostle Thomas said, no. Let me touch that wound. Let me see the evidence that you've been resurrected. Okay, you're not going to fool me by telling me something and think I'm going to believe it like I'm an idiot. So the author goes on to say that event exemplifies the physical analogy which represents the twins of May and June, that's Castor and Polox, as presiding over the administration of justice. That's at the bottom, the last paragraph of page 106, and the top, and that paragraph flows over onto page 107. Everybody sees it? Everybody sees it? It is what it is, y'all. Is this coincidence? You decide. Is it coincidence? You decide. Has the author presented enough evidence for you to make a decision that this is true, what he's saying? Or you're not able to say that this is true at this moment? Either way, think it over. All right? So now let's go down to the last paragraph. I want to show y'all something, how this stuff is right in your face. This is how confident they are that they control your perception through what you thought was an education, but was really an indoctrination. I don't care if you got a PhD, you've been indoctrinated. All right? Unless you've studied linguistics and philology, unless you're familiar with Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, if you're in the Western world, you're finished. You'll never be able to see this. The author writes, hence, so many names of towns in Britain. Well, let me go up here. We're going to go here. All right. So it says here, the name Castor seems to be a compound of ka, aster. So there's two words. There's ka, and then there's aster. All right. So what are we looking at? We're looking at etymology, the science of words and their original meaning. Ka, aster means the temple or place of Astor. Ka Astor was by the Greeks abbreviated into Castor. Now this is cited from Bryant. Okay, it's cited from Bryant, so y'all can go back and research this. Hence, so many names of the towns in Britain. So now we're going to see that in Britain, they named the towns after this deity Castor. So many names of the towns in Britain among the Britons of Phoenician extraction. Who are these Britons of Phoenician extractions? Who are these Britons of Phoenician extraction? Well, we know who the Phoenicians are, don't we? They're the Canaanites, the Moabites, the Hittites, the Amorite. All of these people are considered Phoenicians. If you want more on who are the Phoenicians, get the book, The First Americans Were African by Dr. David Imhotep. Everybody should go buy his book. That's a phenomenal book. He's got two out. I think it's already in the second edition. Buy both of his books. It is phenomenal. All right, phenomenal. The First Americans Were African by Dr. David Imhotep, or Imhotep. Okay, and he's going to show you who the Phoenicians are. Yes, including Phoenicians are also so-called Israelites. Also so-called Israelites. So the author is saying that the Israelites, the Canaanites, so we know that these are all what? These are all people who sprung from the earth, who moved up into what is now called Britain or the UK. He's talking about these people. Hence, so many names of the town in Britain among the bright times of Phoenician extraction, quoting from, again, Bryant, volume 6, page 158. So many of these names, the names of those cities ending in cester, that is the name of the city with the suffix cester at the end. For example, Alcester, Chester, Esther, Manchester, Dorchester, Godmanchester, Ilchester, Lancaster, Leicester, Gloucester, Rochester or Rochester, Chichester or Chichester, Cirencester, Worcester or Worcester. All of these cities have something in common. What do they have in common according to the author? Read here. All of them are distinguished by remains of cathedrals. All these cities have cathedrals that were dedicated to the great deity Castor, the sun in Gemini. All right, that includes what? The author continues, as that of London is to his brother Pole. Okay, now he talks about the ancient Saxons and London Castor. The ancient Saxons and London Castor. Here it is, y'all. So y'all go back and read this yourself. All right, London Castor. All right, and then here, so that there's nobody who can say anything, Castor and Polox, the two Dioscuri, were considered and spoken of as the greatest of all of the deities. The Apostle Paul is considered and spoken of as the greatest of all of Christ's followers. In fact, he was so great that he wrote the vast majority of the gospel books. I'm Dr. Yasapa from Zion Law School. I want to say thank you for spending your evening with me. This may have been difficult, but y'all make sure y'all do what you got to do, okay? Go back and read through this, not read through it, but go back and watch this video as many times as you need in order to understand it, okay? And read the book. The link to the free PDF is in the description area of this video, y'all. All right, so you can do it. You can do it. You are the power. You can do it. Go back and read the book. Watch the video. Do your research. Subscribe. Don't forget to support us, right? Don't forget to support us. But this benefits you more than it does us. But we need your support. We put this information out so that you can learn. So that you can learn. Break the God spell. Okay? Dive into the Ibaryath. Subscribe to the streaming online 101 Ancient Ibaryath course. All right? And here we are right here. This is on zionlawschool.org. Click on course offerings and subscribe. You're going to learn our language. All right? This is 113 videos. I'm teaching it myself. So if you like my teaching style, if you like my personality, then subscribe. There's no contract. You can cancel anytime, and it's basically free. It's only $10 a month, right? This is going to help you not only in becoming a person or a man or a woman who has the skill set to render or to translate the Bible on your own without the help of a teacher, right? That's what this is preparing you for. You won't need anybody. You will be an educated person. You won't need Dr. Yasapa. Okay? All right? You won't need me. You will be able to do this on your own. So this is putting you on track to become a highly educated person, to get knowledge that 99.9999% of the world does not have. All right? This is the master key. This is the master key to Jeremiah 8, verse 8. This is going to show you powerfully what etymology is, what grammar rules are, and then how these things are used to create meaning and also to create what? To cast spells. Words, text can free you or they can enslave you. That's why writing is called casting spells. Everybody see that? Okay, so go ahead and subscribe now if you haven't already done so. So go to zionlawschool.org. Okay, this is a phenomenal online course, all right? Now, all you have to do is scroll down and you can subscribe. Okay, you can subscribe by clicking here. If you continue to scroll down, it's going to give you all the information you need to know about the course syllabus. Okay, there's a lot of information here. So we have part 1. Part 2 is everything pictographs. So you get pictographs, everything that they mean. You get 220 something vocabulary words. You get Ibaryath word studies that are phenomenal. Ibaryath word studies are phenomenal, you know. I mean, they are jewels, pearls. And then part 3, you get the Ibaryath grammar. All right, you get the Ibaryath grammar. This is a very big course. This course can set your mind free. Trust me. Now, you'll want to also register for our Saturday class, okay, which is a live online class. So y'all, the link is in the description area of the video. So y'all make sure you go and register for the class. And then thanks, by the way, to those people who have purchased the 911 Ibaryath Rescue book. We appreciate your support. This book, you can use it with the 101 Ancient Ibaryath course. This is going to teach you not everything about the pictographs, right? But it's going to teach you enough about the pictographs. It has everything but cultural context. Cultural context you have to get from the streaming 101 Ancient Ibaryath course, okay? So I teach cultural context in the class, all right? Because it's a lot. All right, y'all. So I hope to see you this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to support me, my Cash App, let me put that on. My Cash App is $DrYasapa, 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 and my Cash App is PayPal. No, my PayPal is paypal.me/Zion Law School. All right. And again, the Cash App is $DrYasapa. I hope y'all enjoyed this presentation. Paul has a lot of problems. This is the biggest problem associated with the Apostle Paul. All of the other problems with Paul are less than this. Go ask your preacher, your moray, your rabbi, your general, captain, officer, whatever person has position in your church, camp, assembly, whatever type of organization you might be in, you go ask them to explain the content of this video and see what kind of answer you get. I'm Dr. Yasapa from Zion Law School, Islam, and Shalawama to all of the Moors.